So, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm here to talk about Angular. And if we look at Angular in the couple of versions we got lately, there was a lot of changes. And those changes made Angular way faster than it used to be. It's way lighter, and I think it makes it a stronger framework overall. So I said my name is Loic. If you're wondering what are those two dots on the I, in French, it's supposed to force you to pronounce the I. Everywhere else, it's to test UTF-8. So that's basically it. I'm a senior developer for a Belgian consultancy company called Zoneless. I'm a father of a 4-year-old little girl, and I'm one of the co-organizers of the Belgian Java user group. You have my socials if you want to connect, and let's dive into it. So when we talk about Angular, and we will talk about performances and things like that, we need to talk about ZoneJS. How many of you are using Angular since before version 10? Yeah. Those of you are probably really aware of that. So ZoneJS is the magic trick that makes all your component refresh when you change an input or change a value in your component. So it's really, really useful. But it has a kind of a side effect. Because if you know a bit about ZoneJS, you know that's a monkey patch over the JavaScript API. So what ZoneJS does is capturing all the events from JavaScript and try to, based on those events, interact, refresh your components and everything. And let's be honest, that's not the most efficient way to do it. And I have a small example to show you. So I have this really simple application. So I have a parent component, that's the one on the top. I have a left and right, so some child component, and I have a grandchild component there in purple. And every time you change a value in your parent component that's required for a grandchild, if I click it, by clicking this button, I will increment this value. You see that the color here are changing because in a fully optimized way with ZoneJS, you at least go deep into the branch where the value is changed. And in this case, I have 4 components. And I'm pretty sure your application is way more complex than that. If you have like 100 components, I think you can clearly see that's not ideal. And I know we are close to this time of year, but to me, it really looks like just like this. And of course, because I'm on stage, it doesn't align properly. But when you click on it, it really feels like a Christmas tree, with light clicking every time you change something. And I think nobody wants that. What they try to achieve without ZoneJS is to be able then, every time you click and change a value, you don't even render the full component, you just render the part of the component that's depending on this new value. So we are already way more efficient doing that by rendering only what needs to be changed and not the full tree or part of the tree. So, in order to do that, we had to do a lot of changes. The first thing we had to change are the control flows. Because the control flows, so the ngIf, the ngFor, the ngSwitch, are basically baked on the ZoneJS things. You need ZoneJS for those directives to work. So we had to change it, and we had 2 solutions. Either try to make those directives work without Zone, or do something new. And we went for the something new. And we create new control flow. So if we took a good old piece of code with an ngFor, you had this with an ng container, the ngFor, the loop, and you can use pipes. With the new syntax, it's really similar, but in my opinion, way more readable for anybody. So instead of using the ng container and using any kind of HTML tag, we just use @for. We can do the exact same thing. So we have this iteration over my sheeps in this case with a nesting pipe. The only thing that's now required, but you should already have done it with the old one, is you need to have a way to track change in this list. Before, there was track by function with the ngFor, but it was not mandatory. Now the track is mandatory, so you need to do it. But otherwise, it's pretty similar. For the if, I think that's one of the biggest pain points with those old control flow, because you do a simple if, that's easy. Then you want to do if-else, and already it's getting a bit crowded here. It's less readable. And when you have an else over that, it's getting really hard to read, in my opinion. What they did is they basically used the same syntax as before, so now you have at if your condition. And of course, when you want to do an else, at else. And if you want to do an else if, you have at else if. Just out of curiosity, how many of you thinks the right part is more readable? Yeah, you're right. Great. Because honestly, the left one is really horrible to me. It's really, really wrong. And of course, if you have for if, you probably have switch, and switch are really similar, so it's at switch, at case, and that way we have really something really easy to read at default. So anybody that uses any kind of programming language is really already at ease with this syntax. I'm pretty sure you show it to even someone that wrote Pascal or something like that can read this. It's really easy. But that was just the first step. Because we need to have this change detection, we need to have something that allows us to detect when something changed in our component. And by the way, I missed that. I presume that you don't want to do all this migration by hand, going to every of your components, changing the syntax. You could totally do this with this schematic. So this schematic will migrate your JavaScript code or your Angular code to this new syntax through you without having to do anything. I would recommend reading the change because you could go further than what it does because it's still just a script. It's not really smart. And by the way, if you're migrating to Angular 20, you won't have the choice. Because with Angular 20, when you do the ng update, it will automatically run this schematic for you and switch to the new syntax. And I've run this schematic on large project, and honestly, it works perfectly. You don't have to worry too much. I never break anything doing it, so I would recommend you to use it. So, to have these change detection capabilities, they had to introduce something new. And this something new is called signals. How many of you knows about signals? Okay, just a couple of hands. So sorry for you guys, it might be a small reminder, but we'll go through that. So the simplest way I could explain signal is to take a box. I think everybody can imagine a box. And with this box, you want to put something in it. In my case, I want to put a sheep. So I will take this sheep, put it in my box. If you look at the syntax for Angular, it's really simple. So you define a field, and you say signal of type sheep, and you provide your value there. Until here, it's quite easy. And at some point, of course, you want to get back what's in the box. And to do that, you will use your variable and two parentheses. So you try to open the box. And you will get back your value. You will get back your sheep. For any of you that are really following, it's just a wrapper at this point. It does not do anything magic. And that's where the magic happens, is when you open the box, there is a signal, hence the name. So every time you open the box, you notify the owner of this signal saying, I'm interested the next time you change the value in this box, because I'm very interested about that. But when I say the next time, it's only the next time. So if I open the box, get the value, and I will get the next update, but if I don't open the box when I get the next update, I will not get the following update. So that's where it's really different from a subject or an observable in Angular. Here we just get the next update, not all the updates coming until I unsubscribe. So that's really great in theory, but personally, the place I learned them best is writing code. So I will show you a small app so we can go through that. So I'm just going to reset my project and restart this. So I have this small application. And it's reloading, of course. What's happening here? We should go there. Come on. That's the risk when you do live demo, of course. I will restart it. And for some reason, I've lost my... Yeah, here we go. Let's go again. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah. I have all these sheep. And sorry for the bad puns and everything. I really like that. So we will try to use those signals in action. So as you can see, I can like a sheep, but right now it's not doing anything. So we're going to use a signal to do that. Is it readable in the back for you, the code? Yeah, great. Let's go for it. I have here my card. So that's the small card with the sheep. And I'm going to use a signal for the likes. So let's say likes. It's a signal. And I'm going to say it's a number and provide an initial value. And at some point when I click on this little heart, I want to do an update. I want to set the new value. So to do that, there is two methods on the signal. There is either the set. So the set is just here the new value. I don't care about what was there before. And there is the update. The one I'm interested here is I provide a function where I get the old value and I can compute a new value based on it. So that's just the start. Now I need to, of course, use this field in my page, so I'm just going to remove this. Provide the parentheses because it's a signal. And out of the box, it's working. So that's really the basic. But I want to do more than that. So you can see here I have a filter, and I would like to be able to filter the sheaves based on what I put it here. So let's switch component, here we go. Here we go. So right now I have this grid, so this component, parent component with all the sheaves, and I would like to be able to filter it. Of course, as any good developer, someone gave me a new tool, I need to use it everywhere. So I will change my search text to a signal. Here we go. So that's just a signal. My issue right now is, if you look, I'm getting all these sheep, and it's an observable. That's not really what I want. I would like to have signals, because signals work well with other signals. So the first thing I want to do is to change this to something else. And it would be nice if I can just take my observable and make it to a signal. And that's basically what I'm going to do with this simple function called toSignal. The only issue out of the box is it can either be an array of sheep or undefined. And I personally don't want to deal with undefined. So what you can do in this case is provide initial, go away please, yeah, an initial value. And in my case, I'm just going to provide an empty array. So now I have only signals, and I want to compute a new value based on those elements. And please, here we go. So, as I said, I want to compute something. So I want to have those filter sheaves. And I can simply say compute it. That's a new type of signal. And I provide a function to compute the new value. So in this case, what I want to do is take my list of sheaves, filter it, take every sheep and take, based on the name, put it to uppercase so I don't have to worry about that, and see if it includes the value in my search text. And to uppercase, here we go. So doing that, I have normally a filter list, and every time one of the signal will be updated, the value will be recomputed for me. So let's replace this in my HTML here. So I don't need this anymore. I can just use this. So, and of course, because I changed that, there is here this line of code, I don't need it anymore. And it should be good. So now I can type something and have live reload on it. It's working. So I have computed. I want to do more than just compute value. I could probably want to activate something, run something specific when the value of a signal change. And there is something special to do that. So let's say I want that every time I click on this button, I have a little snack bar saying something happens. So all I'm going to do is change this component. Let's say I want a snack bar. Inject, and I will take the mat snack bar out of the box. And I want to be able to act every time something changes. To do that, I'm going to use a special function called effect. And all the effects should be in your constructor. And the goal of this effect is the effect will be run every time we open that box and the signal change. So in this case, I'm going to already take my likes. So let's do this. If the likes and not 1,000, 0 is already a good start. I don't want to click that much. I can do something like this. So I will just provide the like count here. So what I'm doing is just opening the snack bar with a message. And every time I'm going to change that signal, it will be updated. So in this case, and I'm missing a curly brace. Where is it? Apparently, I cannot type today. Where are you? No, it should be OK. OK. Just a bit latency here. So every time I'm changing, and I don't think it's really readable, but here there is a toast appearing. So I have an effect. So every time I change something, I execute this code. You need to be really careful about the effect, because until Angular 19, out of the box, you could not change another signal in an effect. And there is a good reason for that. I think you can clearly imagine that if I changing the signal that triggered my effect, I could have an infinite loop. It doesn't mean because now you can do out of the box, you should do it. You should avoid changing signals in an effect. But it's there if you want to use it. So you need to be a bit careful about this effect, but it's there. But I started by saying, yeah, we want to change detection. We want something more efficient. And until now, I didn't really show you what's triggering the most change detection. It's basically our input and our outputs. So let's try this. In the past, we used that at input syntax to say that's an input. With the new signal syntax, you don't need all this. You can use a simple type called input. You can even say it's required. And I will need just to change a few things, since when I'm using it, I need to use the parentheses. So I will replace this simple sheep dot with the parentheses, so every time I'm using it, it's correct. But out of the box, that's it. So right now, you see that everything is still working. And one thing I think is really interesting is I didn't have to change anything in my parent component. If you look, it's still the same code. So Angular is handling the input signal or the old input the same way for parent component. So you can migrate just one component without breaking all your application. So that's for the input. But what about the output? Because we need those two. Anyone want to guess what's the syntax for an output? No? You should try. It's really easy. So let's say I want to output any change on the likes. I'm going to say it's an output. That's that easy. One thing that's really interesting is you want to use this. For anybody that's really familiar with the output and the event emitter and everything, the method you use on an event emitter to emit a value is called emit. So you could just change the type of your field, and nothing breaks. It's still the same API. So that's great. So in my case, I want to show you that it's still working. So I'm going to take this piece of code, navigate back to my parent component, say, OK, likes or on like change. Yeah, I don't really want to do this. Thank you, AI. I'm going to just use this. Of course, I don't have the name of this sheep anymore, so a sheep. provide the snack bar. Here we go. Snack bar, not my dialog. At snack bar. So I need to bind now my event, and for anybody that use output, it's really the same syntax, still the old syntax, so you don't really have to worry about this. You can again just change your output in your child component, and your parent will know any change. You could not notice it. And so in my case now, if I click on this, you can see the pop-up is here saying a sheep has been liked that many times. So basically, I have an output. So if we have input, we have output. The next logical step is two-way binding in Angular. So we used to have an event emitter and a field to do two-way binding. With signals, it's a bit easier. So I'm going to again use my likes. I'm going to remove this because I don't need it anymore. And I can just say it's a model. I can even say it's required. So in that case, I don't need the 0. And so it's a model signal. A model signal is basically a field that's able to do two-way binding. I don't need this. And I'm going to change my parents again. So it's not really happy. I'm going to change this. Here we go. Likes. And I'm going to just provide a field for that. Likes. Let's create a field. Of course, it needs to be a signal. So this is it. It should be OK. I just want to keep this little effect I add every time I change the value. So we're going to just use the good old effect and say, OK, this done on like change, I provide my signal. That way, every time I click on this, you see I still have the snack bar. But you can see that every sheep has the same value because I'm sharing the same signal for every card. But I'm doing two-way binding. I'm changing the value in the child, and my parent can get it too. So I have two-way binding working for me. You would be wondering, OK, but what about view child, view children? Because we use that too. And that's that easy to use because you can say, let's say I have some children. And I can just say view children. Provide my sheep card. I don't need this. Here we go. And that way you have a signal for your child. And you could use that view child, view children. It works for both of them. There's one thing I glass over at this point is, if you look here, you will see that I have writable signal and signal. So all signal are not equal. As the name suggests, a writable signal, you can update the value. A simple signal is read-only. And that's a bit boring for me in my case, because I want to be able to add something. But since my filter sheep is a simple signal, my sheep is a signal, I want to have something. I really would like to be able to do something like this.filtered_sheeps.update and do something like this. But since it's a simple signal, not writable, I'm a bit stuck. In fact, it's really easy to fix with Angular 19 because there is a linked signal. And it's really, the best way I can explain it to you is a computed, but where you can write it. So it's a writable computed signal. That's the simplest explanation I can give you. And doing this, I can now add a sheep, provide description, and I have it. So I think you noticed there was quite a few new type of signal. We got the simple signal, the computed, the linked signal, the effect, the input, the output, the query, so the view child, view children, and the model for the two-way binding. And you're probably wondering, OK, but what I do with my existing application? Because I don't want to rewrite everything manually if I want to use that. And Angular agrees with you. Since Angular 19, there is 3 schematics. Want to migrate all the inputs, one to migrate all the output, and one to migrate all the queries, so view child, view children. And one really nice feature of those schematic is if you try to run it, it will ask you, do you want me to migrate only what I can migrate and be sure it works? Or do you want me to migrate everything? I've run it on an application, and that was the moment I realized that there is some place in my application, and I didn't write all the code, that didn't properly use outputs. So you can run it and be sure to say, OK, migrate only what you need, what will work for me, and I will look at the rest later on. Or you can do YOLO, and then I will fix everything. But Angular didn't stop there, because there is more signals to come. With Angular 21, that will release in a couple of weeks, we added forms. So we use forms in all our applications, and up until now, forms were still using observables. So we added forms in Angular 21. It's an experimental, so please don't put it in your production application, because the API might change, but it's there if you want to experiment with it. So I will show you a small example. There is a lot more to cover, so if you want to learn more, go look at the documentation and everything, because it goes way deeper than just what I'm going to show you. So I've showed you I have a small form here, so we will try to use a single form for that. So it's my dialog here, and if you used Angular forms, reactive forms, you're pretty familiar with a form group, a form builder, and everything. So what I want to do is define just a model. So let's say it's a signal of a sheep, and I need to have all those fields for me. And I would like to create a form based on that. And up until now, it was all this syntax. With the single forms, I can throw those away, throw my form builder away, and I can simply say, this is a form, and this is my signal. I don't need this for now. Let's keep it simple. And I don't need the parentheses. Thank you. By doing so, I just created a single form. Of course, I will need to update a bit my HTML, because the form group, we don't use it anymore with single forms. The form control name, we don't use it anymore again. We will replace it with a new directive called field. And one of the nice things of this directive is now you can use type safety with it. You don't need to remember how to properly type your string for the form control name. You have type safety. Your IDE will be able to say, that's not a field that exists on your form. Another thing I need to change here, so I will have the same type safety here, so I can say name, and then provide, OK, I get the value, and I don't need this. And it's a signal again, invalid, but everything is signal there. And again, I have type safety here, so I can again do the same trick here, field, and say, OK, sheep form dot description, and here do the same thing. Here we go. Here we go, and change this. And I think I still have a couple of errors, but I think you get the logic here. I can reuse form, and it's, in my opinion, really more readable than using the form group, those strings that needs to match a bit magically. That's not the easiest way. Here, I need to use the value. So you have a value to get the value of your element. And when you use those new forms, it automatically updates your signal that you built your form onto. So you don't have to play and synchronize it. But if you use something like state management, I know there was a talk yesterday about state management, and I expected to talk about signals and things like that with state management. You could also use the linked signal to create a copy of the original signal. So when the user fills out the form, you don't change anything to your original value. You check if it's valid, and if it's valid, then you push it to the state, and you avoid overwriting involuntarily your state. So that's for the forms. But they didn't stop there again. they added another experimental API called resources. And if you look at resource at the first sight, you might say, yeah, there is no signal there. But there is. So the goal of resources is to get an HTTP, not even a HTTP, a resource. So basically, it's an HTTP GET or something like that. You should not use it to do some modification, some HTTP post or things like that. But that's really new and experimental, so we will go through that. I'm going to just take my GitHub repository history. By the way, I will provide a QR code with all the code I'm showing you here. And you will have all the GitHub commits, so you can go through everything and see the diff I did for every step, so you can learn by yourself and experiment if you want. So let's start with this one. I'm going to force checkout. And I have a service to load all those things. So I think you could guess that previously I was just using this HTTP GET with an observable. When you want to use resource, there is a different type of resource. The most common or the easiest to grasp at first is probably the Rx resource. So you're still using observable. So you provide a stream, and this stream returns an observable. You can provide a default value. But it changed a few things in your components. You can see that, no, my sheep is not a signal anymore. It's a resource. It means that when I want to use it in my component, in my link signal here, I need to call value to get the value of this resource. But I have other neat trick. Now I can call a reload on it. I can say this resource, please reload it. And it will do the HTTP call for me without me having to change anything. There is other things on this. You can update and set everything, but there is a signal to say there is an error, a signal to say, oh, it's loading, and you can even get all the status of your HTTP request or of your observable. So that's what can provide your resource using Rx. Is anybody using fetch to load data from a backend? Couple of hands, so that's for you guys. Let's go back to my Git repo. If you don't want to use RxJS, you can use fetch. And in that case, you will reuse a simple resource. That's really the same logic. But there is only a loader function, and there you can use a fetch and load all the data you want without having to use observable. But I think the most useful resource that you can use is neither of those. It's what we call HTTP resource. So let's go back to my service. So an HTTP resource is way more simpler to write than anything else. So you can provide HTTP resource, provide a simple string, and we'll come back why there is something in there. You can provide a default value, and it will do basically what you've seen with the Rx resource for you without having to write all those boilerplate. I've put here something in my HTTP call. I want to use a parameter. And if you look a bit up here, it's a signal. I'm using signal again. And if I look where I use it, of course, you might guess it at this point. It's the field I'm using to filter my sheeps on my front end. So what's happening, because I'm using this signal and it's used in the HTTP resource, and I'm going to open this, make it a bit bigger, I think. Every time I'm going to type something, because it's a signal, it calls my backend for me automatically. But there is still some caveat, because if I do this, I can really send a lot of HTTP requests. So there is no debounce or anything that you're probably used to when you have autofill or something like that. But it's there, and we can try a few things with that. But we have already a lot of things here that we can use to improve our APIs. But one goal was to go zoneless. And beginning of the year, I was saying, yeah, zoneless is the future. In fact, it's not the case anymore. Because with Angular 20.2, I think, zoneless became just a feature of Angular. It's not experimental, it's there to stay. So let's check it. So the easiest thing to do is first go to your Angular JSON and remove ZoneJS because you don't want to use ZoneJS. The other thing you need to do is go to your app config, and I say config. There we go. And in the past, you were using this, provide zone change detection. I don't use zone anymore, so I can do this and say provide zoneless change detection. And just by doing that, I'm removing zone from my project. I don't use it anymore. By the way, with Angular 21, you will be able to remove this. Provide HTTP client will be by default in all your applications, so you can use it. And for that change, I need to restore my front-end application because I changed my Angular JSON, so it's not that trivial. So let's go for that. And of course, in my case, everything is still working because I use Signal everywhere. I'm using the new control flow and everything. But that's something you can definitely do now. And if you go see some benchmark and you look at the performance of Angular with those zone, without zone, with all this new control flow with signals, we get something that's almost as fast as Vue.js. That was one of the top contenders in terms of performances in JavaScript world. So basically, they made Angular way faster than it all used to be. And I think we still have a lot in-house to improve it, because yes, you could see there is the forms coming, the resource is going to probably evolve again, and we're trying basically to improve Angular, but also make it simpler for any developer to pick it up, because I think the Signal API is way easier to use than observable subject and anything. But at the same time, it does way more complex stuff than the observable if you look at it. But you might get lost because that's just the changelog of the 7 last version. There is a QR code. If you want to check it, it's always a good thing if you are not sure what is available in your current version of Angular. But there was a lot of changes. They are still pushing new changing every time there is something. And I'm at the point that I'm wondering, how is it possible? Because Angular was already feature-rich. How can they imagine so much new feature, but they still do it? So I'm not sure what we're going to get in the future, but I think it's still very, very interesting. And I think as developers, that's the best we can hope, because a framework that's changing and evolving means basically that you have something that's really alive and not just dying in the corner and nobody cares about it. I have one thing to ask you, but before that, I can promise you a little gift. I have some stickers in front, so please come grab some. And I have also next to me some Belgian chocolate, so feel free to grab some. I really would like for you to take a minute and go to the DevOps app and give me your feedback. I really value that. That's how I can improve my talks. I know what's good, what's maybe less. If you enjoyed it, please take a minute to do that. I really appreciate it. And I see some phones up, so I will wait for it. Apparently, it's good. Still there. Yeah, we're good, I think. If you're interested in the source code, that's the QR code that will link to my GitHub repo. So even if you don't have time to scan it or something, you can just go to my GitHub repo. The code is there. You can play with it. Feel free. That's probably another way for you to learn or to practice it. The slides are already in the DevOps app, so there is in the DevOps app a tab where you can find the slides, so you can download it if you want to reread it or remind you of everything. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I think we are a bit out of time, but you can come here and we can have a nice chat. So thank you.